blood
Always remember the blood
that these men sacrificed.
Remember our coal miners. Remember the general. Remember the union, yes.
Union, yes!
Union, yes.
Solidarity!
Solidarity.
Still love the coal miners.
The angel of the coal miners!
Solidarity.
Solidarity!
Union time.
Union time!
Remember Virden.
Remember Virden!
Always remember Mother Jones.
Always remember Mother Jones!
Okay, sorry, thank you. But we know there are many anonymous dead buried in graves in coal towns around this state and around this country. So we hope to remember all of them today, as well as our own ancestors, our good ancestors who gave us the day today. We want to just briefly tell you who we are. I'm Joanne Conalone. I'm with Union Miners Cemetery and the Mother Jones Museum, and I grew up with a story. These are my miners, some of them buried here. I work with these wonderful people who keep this story alive, and this is Anna.
Anna Ecker, and I'm with the Union Miners Cemetery. I want to just thank you all for joining us today to celebrate the sacrifice that these men made. Like many of you, I come from a coal mining family, and we're very proud of that heritage and what that generation did to help all of us. So thank you for coming.
Yes, we're very glad to have all of you and see all of you. The ancestors would be proud that we haven't forgotten them and that we're all here today. There's just a couple of changes in the program, because there always have to be changes in the program, right? Nick Crumrighty, our wonderful board member, who's a great singer-songwriter and wrote the beautiful Ballad of Virden, is not able to be with us today. He's got a good excuse. He's recovering from surgery. He's well, but he's just not up to singing. As usual, Wildflower comes to our rescue, and they will sing another song in that place. The other thing is just a little bit change in the agenda. After Tim Dre speaks, then Scotty Thomas will speak from the United Mine Workers of America, Local 1613, Mount Olive here. Very good. So, Mike, shall we do the pledge?
Here we are. We'll have Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Caveney. I am the president of the Friends of the Mother Jones Museum, and we were just discussing this will be my 8th Miners Day here, so we have started this tradition and continued it for, I'm sure, a few years before I even was involved in this. I want to welcome you today to our ceremony of sorts, our presentations. I hope you enjoy them. They are so important to me. I am not a descendant of a coal miner. I am part of the teachers union, and my family were all union members and proud supporters of unions. We are also here to commemorate the 125th anniversary of the Virden Mine Wars, so I would like you to keep that in your hearts and prayers as we remember those boys who sacrificed their lives for us. At this time, we're going to get the program started, and I'd like to introduce our City Councilwoman, Ms. Marcia Schulte.
I'd like to welcome you all to Mount Olive. We're a union town. I was president of the teachers local here when we went on strike, and we stood with Mother Jones. We were the sons and daughters of Mother Jones at that time, and the idea of Mother Jones spreads all through the state of Illinois. During that strike, we met a person from Peoria, and the way he found us and found out about this was he used to travel from Peoria to SIU, and he saw the sign and he pulled in and saw Mother Jones. And then he contacted us when he found out we were on strike, and he supported us and helped us with lots of things. So The idea of Mother Jones spreads all over the world. And we're so proud to have it here in Mount Olive. And we'd like to welcome you today and come back some other time. There's all kinds of things uptown to see and do when we're open. But there's lots of people that stop when they travel Route 66 from all over the world. So please listen to our story here today and come back and see us again.
Marcia's a member of a local teachers union and very much an activist in union struggles and causes. So here we are with Wildflower, and you are going to play Children of Mother Jones? Thank you.
Pete Duffy is the songwriter behind this song, and he was from Cork, County Cork in Ireland, as was Mother Jones. So we're going to sing this song that he had written, and in Pete Seeger style, give me a little vamp there. In Pete Seeger style, I think it's better when it's sung with a lot of people. I think he intended it that way. So the chorus is very simple. We have freedom, freedom in our bones. We are children of our Mother Jones. We have freedom as we fight for liberty. We'll never be forgotten as she strives to set us free. And the song starts that way. So if you feel brave, go ahead and sing along with us. We have freedom, freedom in our bones. We are the children of our Mother Jones. We have freedom as we fight for liberty. We'll never be forgotten as she strives to set us free. We were the first to march that picket line, while the plight of children's labor she unveiled. In our hearts we knew we could not fail, while Cork's own rebel daughter told our tale. We have freedom, freedom in our bones. We are the children of our Mother Jones. We have freedom as we fight for liberty. We'll never be forgotten as she strives to set us free. The police had their baton bombs and guns and drew from endless capitalistic funds. All we had were pockets full of stones, but we were led by fearless Mother Jones. Oh, we had freedom, freedom in our bones. We are the children of our Mother Jones. We have freedom as we fight for liberty. We'll never be forgotten as she strives to set us free. Those in power gave her no sympathy in her fight to set the children free. Now she lies in Mount Olive, Illinois. For all time she lays beside her boy. Oh, we have freedom, freedom in our bones. We are the children of our Mother Jones. We have freedom as we fight for liberty. We'll never be forgotten as she strives to set us free. We have freedom, freedom in our bones. We are the children of our Mother Jones. We have freedom as we fight for liberty. We'll never be forgotten as she strives to set us free. Oh, we'll never be forgotten as she strives to set us free.
Good afternoon. My name is Devin Hunter. I'm Associate Professor of History at University of Illinois Springfield. I'm also a proud charter member of the UIS United Faculty Chapter, UPI Local 4100. It's a growing local now with the addition of tenure track faculty at Illinois State University. And I'm co-director of the Mythic Mississippi Project with Helene Silverman here. Helene was, there she is, in the front. That's worked with the museum and the cemetery and Dave Tucker's museum there in Gillespie on some projects. From the very beginning in October 1898, the miners and their allies knew they were making history. But as you might know, history is not inevitable. It takes people like you to keep the memory alive. So it's my honor to introduce, for my money, maybe the most important or knowledgeable historian of the Battle of Virden, Mr. John Alexander.
Thank you, Devin, and it's good to see so many people here today on such a beautiful day. I was at, not the U of I Springfield, but Sangamon State was its name when I was teaching there many years ago. And one of the historians there, a guy named Ralph Stone. Do any of you remember Ralph? Several of you do. Yeah, he had a great interest in the Virden mine battle and influenced my thinking about it, just as a footnote to Devin's comment. Well, I'm going to tell you a short story here, I hope, and if any of you have a good watch, I understand I have 15 minutes, and I may not take that much time, but if I get close to 15 and you don't think I'm wrapping it up, somebody out there do this, okay? Well, I began hearing about the Virden mine battle back in 1952 at the Virden Centennial. I was 10 years old at the time, so subtract 10 from 52, and I was born in 1942. I never thought I'd live this long. I'm 81. My parents were gone before this age, and my brothers are gone. But what I'd like to tell you today is three things, I guess, or three points. I'm going to give you some facts about the Virden mine battle, talk about some of the myths that surround the battle. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, some of the consequences of the battle. So let's start with some of the facts. Well, I'll bet some of you don't know where Virden is. Probably most of you do, but if you don't, it's a little town about the size of Gillespie in the northeastern corner of the county. As the crow flies, it's about 30 miles north of here. Virden was incorporated in 1852 and had a coal mine by the late 1860s. It's located between two county seats, Carlinville and Springfield. By 1893, the big guys in the coal business had spotted Virden. And here's the simple story why. We have 320 feet beneath the ground in Virden, a seam of coal about 7 to 7.5 feet deep that has a pretty good roof on it and doesn't get very damp. So the guys that wanted to make money decided this was a perfect spot for a coal mine. The United Mine Workers of America also organized about the same time that coal mine went in business. They date back to 1890 and 91 were kind of the organizational years, if I remember right, on the UMWA. And one of their big challenges in the 1890s was to try and boost what was then the sinking wages of miners. I better depend on a note here. In the 1880s, miners were making 80 cents a ton delivered to the top, and that price sunk to 32.5 cents a ton by the late 1890s. Quite a pay cut, wasn't it? We don't really understand that today. We think everything just goes up and up. Costs we know go up and up, and sometimes wages keep up. But this was a different economic situation. I wanted to add the footnote on the Virden mine that it was a shipping mine. Illinois had about 800 coal mines in the 1890s. In other words, most towns had, if they were real coal towns, might have had multiple mines, maybe 2 or 3 or 4. Virden had 3 in operation eventually at one time. But this Chicago Virden Coal Company produced enough coal to ship coal, primarily into the Chicago area where the corporate headquarters was. They were able to find contracts and ship coal in that direction. I found out that down here in the south end of the county, most of the mine produced by shipping, most of the coal produced by shipping mines was sent to the St. Louis area. But Virden was kind of on the dividing line and shipped to the north for whatever that's worth. So the UMWA decided to try and increase the wages of miners. And as most of us know, on July 4th, 1897, the Great Coal Strike began with an effort to increase wages from 32.5 to 55 cents a ton. Not as high as it had been, but at least going in the right direction. In January of 1898, 6 months after the strike began, Illinois operators and miners agreed to 40 cents a ton, kind of midway there, a compromise. It's not something that the politicians are too good at anymore, is compromise. But I was kind of raised with the idea that a half a loaf is better than none. And now, well, I don't even want to get started on that topic. I'm an old politician myself. Okay, so this new scale wage of 40 cents a ton was accepted by 776 of the state's 800 mines. 97% said we can live with that 40-cent hike, 32.5 to 40. The Virden mine was one of the 24 that said no, we will not pay 40 cents a ton. And the terms of the agreement said that if you were a miner at one of these 24 mines that did not accept the new scale wage, you had to approve of going back to work at less than 40. The Virden miners said they would not go back to work for less than scale wages. So guess what? They were locked out of work on April 1st, 1898. They had been out for about 9 months, and little did they know that they were going to be out another 6.5 months. Imagine 15.5 months without a paycheck. After April 1st, probably the most important thing to know about the Virden mine battle is that Illinois did have a state arbitration board that ruled for the miners, said they deserved the pay hike to 40 cents. But guess what? The state arbitration board could not render a binding decision. Again, Fred Lukens, the owner of the Virden mine, said, thank goodness I'm not going to pay it. What does he do? He locks the doors, as we mentioned, and Lucas eventually decided to replace the 400 Virden miners that began the strike and were now locked out. So he advertised for replacement workers in Birmingham, Alabama, and he aimed the ad at African American miners, of whom there were many in Alabama. He found 105 takers, 100 family members accompanied them, and they left Birmingham in early October of 1898, bound for Virden. My feeling is that they were duped. They had no idea what they were getting into. And guess again here, how much do you think Lukens offered them? He was paying 32.5. He refused to pay 30 cents a ton, and he found takers. So here's quickly the story of the battle. At St. Louis, the train bearing the strikebreakers picked up 75 Teal Detective Agency armed guards, carrying the best weapons available at the time. There were already 75 armed guards at the mine in Virden, where Lukens had built a stockade, or you could say a fort, around the mine. It's kind of shaping up as a bad situation. As the train approached town, it was told to stop and let the replacement workers off the train right in front of the mine. The first casualty occurred at the railroad station downtown in Virden, where a Chicago and Alton Railroad detective was killed. Between downtown and the mine, which kind of sits in the northeast corner of Virden, firing broke loose like we can't imagine. There were approximately 1,200 armed miners, 400 from Virden and about 800 more from the surrounding area. And Mount Olive provided a pretty good number as well. Probably about 50 to 75 of those 800 were from Mount Olive. But they came from Girard, Springfield, Taylorville, anywhere within about 40 or 50 miles of Virden to support their locked out brothers. At the mine site, in about 15 minutes' time, there were 13 people killed. Doesn't sound like very many, does it, compared to a Civil War battle, but compared to other battles, of smaller scale battles, that's a lot of people killed in a few minutes. Many, many more were wounded. There's no good count on them, but conservatively 40, maybe up to 75 or 100 were wounded. We've got the list of the names over here of the Virden martyrs. Now I would tell you that surprisingly and interestingly to me as a Virdenite, no one from Virden was killed at the Battle of Virden. They were all from around the area. So how did the state deal with what was going on in Virden? The state militia, or Illinois National Guard, which had been in Pana, where there were also problems, was dispatched to Virden by Governor John Tanner. When the Guard reached Virden, both sides were disarmed. Everyone was sent home, whether they lived in Virden or Mount Olive or wherever, home. The saloons were closed, and hundreds of members of the Guard set up camp on the Virden town square for several weeks. So in other words, Virden was under martial law for about a month after the Virden mine battle. You can imagine that there was lots of blame going on. The company blamed the governor. Why? Because he did not send in the Guard earlier to help get the miners off the train. It was expected that a Republican governor would do that, but Tanner refused, and he had let his feelings be known to the Chicago Virden Coal Company officials. The governor, interestingly enough, was indicted by the Macoupin County jury that said, we agree that you have not done your duty as governor, and we want to try you down here in Carlinville. And guess what? The governor had to go to Carlinville and defend himself, but eventually the charges were dropped. But it's pretty unusual, is it not, that a county could force the governor to come down and defend his decision. Okay, I'm going to try and pick up the pace here a little bit. Let me address the myths that surround the battle. The picture that was painted at that Virden Centennial I talked about in 1952 raised a lot of questions in my mind, and I decided to pursue the topic for all these years in between. That's a lot of years. But the picture portrayed of the miners was that they were striking miners who riot when black coal miners suddenly appeared in town. Now I'd like to dissect this quickly. Were they striking miners? Well, first of all, the strike was over. It ended in April 1, 1898. Beyond that point, the Virden miners were locked out. The 800 people who came to Virden in support of the Virden miners were technically all back to work. So, in my mind, there was not one striking miner at Virden on the day of the battle. Although some, including labor historians who should know better, have called this a battle between striking miners and guards. Not true. They were locked out, not on strike. They were back at work, the helpers. So I'm saying let's get it right. Let's say, tell it like it is, they were locked out miners. They were not striking miners at the battle. The Virden battle was known for years as the Virden Mine Riot. And it occurred to me eventually, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, that's just not right. That's not the right word. A riot is something spontaneous. You don't plan a riot, it just kind of happens. Somebody provokes a riot. Riots in American history, social labor type riots, may occur for a reason unseen, and the end result is a bad situation, but they're not planned. And I would maintain the Virden mine battle was carefully planned by both sides. The 1,200 or so miners were armed, positioned like on a little battlefield in a pasture that remains pretty much the same as it did in 1898. They were ready and waiting for a train they knew was coming. The company had about 150 better armed guards, about 75 in the train and say 75 more in the stockade or fort just recently built around the mine. They too expected action that would happen when the train stopped at the mine site. It was a battle, not a riot, and let's get that right too. I had always heard that the train, the engineer was wounded, and I suppose if you were trying to stop the train, it would make sense for some of those 1,200 miners to be firing at the engineer. Well, they didn't kill him, but they wounded him pretty badly. He was eventually able to pull out, go to Springfield. Anyway, I lost my point for just a second, but I wanted to share with you a little piece of little known information is what I'm trying to say. The story has been all these years that the replacement workers were unable to land anybody at the Virden mine that day, but the truth of the matter is 6 did get off the train. I found a story in the Virden newspaper years ago that said those 6 were in town for about a month, worked at the mine long enough to pay their train fare up to Virden and back to Birmingham. Imagine they had to pay to come to a volatile situation. Again, supporting the idea, I think, that these fellows had been misled. I call them victims. I know it would be easier to say scabs, but I really feel like they really didn't have a handle on the situation, and in my mind, it's a little unfair to call them scabs. Was the battle about wages or race? If you go online and Google the Virden mine battle, one of the first 10 sites that comes up says, here's the complete story of the Virden race war. that really gets me going, because in my mind, the battle was all about money. You've heard how 15 months of pain suffered by Virden miners and families. It seems to me if you hadn't been paid for 15 months and you'd been locked out, you'd be madder than hell at the company, and not so much at the people who were duped into coming up to take your job. Okay, so let's address the racial thing for just a minute. Were the Virden miners fighting for an overdue pay hike after being on strike, then locked out for 15 months? Or were these 1,200 miners gathered to shoot at African Americans simply because they were just a bunch of racists? Forgetting their money grievances. Hardly, I would say. Again, we're talking about money, folks. Never mind the UMWA membership included African Americans from the start, and nearly 20,000 by 1900. That's a lot of black coal miners that were members of the UMWA shortly after the Virden mine battle. Never mind either that Virden was an integrated community, which surprises a lot of people, which included black miners, their families, and even a few students in Virden schools, all living peacefully. Note too that the fighting was between white guards and white miners. 13 whites were killed, no blacks, who were unarmed and ordered to hit the deck when the train reached Virden. The fight, again, was about money, not race, and let's get that right. It's my contention that the same battle would have been fought even if the replacement workers had been whites from, say, Michigan. That same thing was bound to happen. Okay, finally, let's talk about consequences or some legacies. First off, Union historians are pretty quick to point out that before Virden, fewer than half the coal miners in Illinois belonged to the Union. Shortly after Virden, and the victory at Virden as they promoted it properly, after Virden, more than half of the miners in Illinois were members of the UMWA. So it was a real good event for the UMWA. There was some legislation passed saying you couldn't bring in armed guards to Illinois and use them as law enforcement people and so forth. But I think there were three main legacies, and one of them we're standing in is the Union Miners Cemetery. 3 men from Mount Olive were killed at Virden, and when their bodies were brought back here the next day, as I understand from reading John Kaiser's nice little book on the cemetery, they were buried in the adjoining cemetery for about a year. About a year later, however, a group like this wanted to commemorate what those heroes had done at Virden, and they were getting flack from some of the people involved in putting that cemetery together. I'm not trying to be your local historian here. I'm primarily leaning on John Kaiser. Are any of you related to John, or do you know of him? A few, yeah. But he was quite a labor historian from this town. Eventually went on to become the president of Missouri State in Springfield, Missouri. Okay, so my point is that in 1899, the bodies of those 3 miners were moved to this newly created Union Miners Cemetery. And it has been expanded over the years. Mike Ketchmar's around and others who know the history of the cemetery. But in my mind, this cemetery is here because of the Virden mine battle. That's one of its greatest legacies, I believe. Mother Jones, spoke here, get this, in 1923, where I'm standing, or somewhere nearby, at the 25th anniversary of the Virden mine battle, and said shortly thereafter she was so impressed with the story of Virden and Mount Olive that she wanted to be buried right here. Now, she didn't pass on until 1930, is that right? Yeah. But after she passed, she was buried here, and half a dozen years later, look what's behind me. The union that she had promoted throughout her life generated enough money. We built a monument on the scale of this, maybe a little less in Virden. It cost about $200,000. I have no idea what this is worth, but it's worth a lot more than that, I can tell you that. And it's amazing that Mother Jones, in my mind, is buried right here in central Illinois and in Macoupin County. And I would submit that she's buried here indirectly because of the Virden mine battle. She wanted to be buried next to those three guys whose names are on that flag. She considered to be martyrs of the Virden mine battle. And lastly, the annual event here at the cemetery started off as Virden Day. And over the years, that name changed a little bit. The time of year stuck with the Virden mine battle somewhere near October 12th. And we're close to that today, only 4 days off. Thursday's the actual anniversary. But the event, known originally again as Virden Day, has become known over the years as Miners Day. It's good by me. I still like the connection directly to Virden. So the most interesting legacies in my mind are right here in front of us. The cemetery, Mother Jones, and you folks coming out annually to support Miners Day, or in my mind I'll call it Virden Day, today on the 125th anniversary of that battle. Thank you.
There is a saying, you never get too far from your roots. Do never forget where you've came from. Tim and his dad, called Babe, never forgets his roots. Him and his dad, Babe, worked at Peabody number 10. He is one of us. No matter where life takes you, never forget your roots. And our next speaker never forgets his roots. It's my honor to introduce AFL-CIO President and our friend, Tim Dre.
Jim, thank you very much. You know, I think that's the nicest introduction I've ever had. So thank you very much. I'm very, very humbled. Before I get into my remarks, how many? I know we have a couple school teachers here, but how many public employees do we have in the crowd? Well, before you go today, please thank John Alexander. John was a delegate to the 1969 Illinois Constitutional Convention, and a very, very important part of that Constitution, a very important clause, I'll put it that way, was the Pension Protection Clause, so that politicians cannot do what that mine operator wanted to do and reduce your pension. And because that pension protection clause is in that in our Constitution because of John Alexander. So thank you, John. I always want to recognize my president, Jody Hogue, UMWA 9819. You know, another great thing about, when I was at the mine, we took April 1st off every year, and we called it Virden Day. And I don't think they do that anymore, but, it was a holiday. And in Illinois, it was Virden Day. And I think that was a good tribute to those miners and what they did to bring up wages. So, General Bradley, always good to see you. Mother Jones. It's always great to see you. But we never say anything about the silent miner. And he's great. And one thing about the silent miner is he's voiceless. That's what Mother Jones did. She spoke up for the voiceless. You know, immigrant miners, you know, from Eastern, Southern, Europe, and African American, and other people that came to this country, they were voiceless. And much today, they're still voiceless. Immigrants are still voiceless today. And the corporations take advantage of that. So 120 years ago, Mother Jones also organized a march, a children's march, that took children who as young as 12 years old working in the factories of Philadelphia, and she took them on a march to Long Island, New York, actually to go to Teddy Roosevelt's house, to bring awareness of these kids are in factories rather than in schools. And, you know, through the years, there were statutes passed, laws passed to outlaw child labor. Mother Jones believed very, very strongly that kids should be in school with the kids of the, you know, working class kids should be in the same schools as rich kids and not in the factory floor or the slaughterhouses or whatever. Now I say that because we have to rededicate ourselves to Mother Jones and what she believed in, to give voice to the children. The most voiceless people in this country are children. Thank you. And she gave voice to those kids, but today we are still fighting that issue of where kids should be. Earlier this year, a 16-year-old kid that started at 14 in a chicken processing plant in Mississippi was mangled in a machine employed by a staffing agency, which is the new term that these corporations get around the laws. They use these staffing agencies, and when OSHA, if OSHA ever comes in, although it's not our employee, it belongs to the staffing agency, and then, you know, try to find out who that is. But, you know, if you stop and think about it, you cannot buy a pack of cigarettes in the state of Illinois without being carded. But in Mississippi, you can go to work like an adult and get mangled in the machine, and they just say, okay, that's okay. It's horrible. But even here in Illinois, in Iowa, let me start with Iowa. They passed a law, the Iowa legislature this year passed a law that will allow kids to work in meat packing plants. Instead of being in school, they can go work, and they tried it in Illinois, and these laws are all underwritten by these secret ALEC, American Legislative Exchange, and these quiet, silent corporate entities that think around, you know, these think tanks that think this stuff up. But even in Illinois, they came in and they wanted to say, well, we're going to call it work study. Yeah, right. Work study. They put nice phrases on it. We have legislators who are duped by this, and Democratic legislators even, that are duped by these terms, and we have to fight that constantly to say, no, kids belong in school, not at a factory. So that is something that we dedicate ourselves every year to do. And even though we have a Department of Labor, and they do a good job, woefully underfunded, the staff is overworked, underpaid. They can't do what they want to do because of the lack of resources to get that done. And then we have a Congress, specifically a United States House of Representatives, that wants to gut the Department of Labor for OSHA and our organizing rights and everything, child labor and all these rules, and they call it, taking the burdensome off government, government's too burdensome on corporations. They can't make money. We can mangle kids, but we can't make money. I call bullshit on that. We have to make sure our Department of Labor is funded We got to expand the Illinois Department of Labor, so anything that you can do to stop child labor or people not getting paid the minimum wage. 20% of minimum wage workers are cheated out of wages. First of all, it's mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. They're already exploiting people by paying a minimum wage, and then they cheat. 20% of them are cheated out of what pennies they get. So let's dedicate ourselves on this 125th anniversary of standing up and fighting back. Let's rededicate ourselves to say we're not going to take it anymore. We're going to get our Mother Jones in us, and we're going to fight like hell to make sure that our kids and our minimum wage workers and every worker has the opportunity to succeed in this country. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you. Brilliant, both of you. Wonderful. You know, we're so lucky in Illinois, and here in Macoupin County, we had John Kaiser. John Kaiser, who preserved so much of the primary sources, who kept the story alive, who wrote about it beautifully. And then we have John, who carries it on. And we have Tim, who's fighting like hell for all of it. And you know, AFL-CIO, United Mine Workers, is part of AFL-CIO. And I am going to introduce Scotty in a moment, but I do want to tell you, when you look at these banners, look at those little boys. You saw them when they were in the parade. When you have time afterwards, come and look at these little boys. Those little boys are Mount Olive coal miners, and that's around 1905. And they have sunshine lamps on their heads. Those are paraffin burning lamps, and they're all dressed up for their pictures. So they went in the mine with a flame on their heads, you know, and we have the original picture of that that was donated to the museum. And we have two wonderful people today who are descendants of these boys. They thrived, they survived, they lived long lives. Bill Hens. Bill, where are you? Bill, you gave us the picture, right? Yes, the original picture, and we have a stand-up of the boys, and we use them all the time. And also John Goldacker. John, are you here? Yes, thank you. And John is on City Council. Both of these men have Mount Olive coal miner roots, and so here we are, all this time later, 1905, talking about it and still fighting for these people. So I do think this is indeed sacred ground. You know, we use that term, I think, sometimes without stopping to think about, well, what is sacred ground? Well, how do we get sacred ground? We get it by sacrifice. Sacrifice is what makes a place sacred. And these are the people who made this place sacred. These people out here, and Mother and the General and the rest of them. So I want to introduce you to Scott Thomas. Scott Thomas is a force for the Gillespie Museum and also for the Union Miners Cemetery. He's one of the go-to guys that always gets what we need done to keep things going. Scotty is is retired coal miners secretary, is president of the Mount Olive United Mine Workers of America 1613 local, and he's here to tell us today about what the United Mine Workers doing, and he's doing. I have to tell you one more thing about him. He is a fabulous gardener. Fabulous gardener. I have garlic at home to prove what a fabulous gardener he is.
You're not going to get any more this year.
Well, okay, but next year. All right, next year. So this garlic that he's been tending, its ancestors, like mine, came through Ellis Island from Italy, and it was sewn into the hem of a skirt of an Italian immigrant, and that descendants of that garlic have been thriving, and now they're thriving in a coal miner's garden. And so, Scott.
All right, thanks. How are you all doing? Before I get started here, everybody say hi to Mom. Mom's going on 97 years old. She's a 56-year member of the APWU. There you go, Mom. All right, the first thing I got for you here is we got a letter from Cecil Roberts, and Cecil's our UMWA president, and he says, "Dear brothers and sisters, although I could not be with you today in person, I'm certainly here I'm certainly there in spirit. The UMWA was formed in large part to serve one of the most critical roles in our society, ensuring justice, safety, and fairness for the working class, and to show that solidarity is the only true way to guarantee these vital principles. It's been a long, hard fight to secure these basic rights, and while the battle for dignity in the workplace never ends, we have come a long way since the early days of our history in the Battle of Virden. We must never forget the sacrifices of our forebears, and we must always learn the lessons of the past, or we will be doomed to repeat them. As the great Mother Jones said, we must pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living. The UMWA always stand for the rights of our members, their families, and all working people. Workers built our great country, not owners. Workers make this country strong, not owners. And workers are where the true power of the United States resides. In unity, there is strength. Let us never forget it. May God bless you and all working people. In solidarity, Cecil E. Roberts. And we're hoping, and I thank him for that and the UMWA, we're hoping to get President Roberts here next October and speak to you in person. If you've never heard him speak, he is absolutely amazing. So, the next thing I got to tell you here is my dad told me this story 50 years ago, and I'm very proud of what he did, and I hope you appreciate the story I'm about ready to tell. January 25th, 1890 in Columbus, Ohio, the UMWA was formed. It was a fledgling organization in 1898 with a few thousand members. After the events of October 1898 in Virden, Illinois, the membership of the United Mine Workers grew by leaps and bounds, reaching a high water mark of 600,000 members by the mid-1900s. It wasn't just the mine workers that were impacted by the Virden massacre. Organizing began in industries throughout the country. Millions of families became union families. Unions built the middle class. This chain of events affected many union members in many different ways. I'll use my dad as an example. He worked for the Olin Corporation. He was a member of the IAM for 40 years. Dad was a machinist and a shop steward. He was very good at what he did. In the early 1970s, the Olin Corporation bought an unprofitable munitions plant in Japan. Dad and two of his supervisors flew to Japan to see if they could fix the problems. They arrived on a Thursday, and on Friday took a tour of the plant. Through an interpreter, the plant superintendent was explaining to my dad about the mechanical issues. The whole time he's talking, this is what my dad saw. No one was wearing safety glasses. They were handling razor-sharp metal without gloves. No one had steel-toed shoes. In fact, they were wearing sandals. When the tour finished, the plant superintendent asked my dad, "Mr. Thomas, can you fix these things?" Dad replied, "Yes, I can, but not until you get these people safety glasses, gloves, and steel-toed shoes." He didn't know if he would be on the red-eye flight back to St. Louis. On Monday morning, they went back to the plant. Much to his surprise, they were handing out safety glasses, gloves, and steel-toed shoes to all the workers. He was there 8 weeks. During his stay, the workers treated him like a rock star. They would offer him bring small gifts or food. No one had ever stood up for them at the workplace. It was their way of showing appreciation. Within a year, the plant became profitable for the first time. Being union doesn't mean you're against the company making money. It's just the opposite. Being union means you're willing to be the conscience a company doesn't have. God bless all that have stood up for what is right. Thank you.
Wildflower is going to play for us one of the most tender and painful songs of labor music, Joe Hill.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he. I never died, said he. In Salt Lake Joe, by God, says I, him standing by my bed. They framed you on a murder charge, says Joe, but I'm not dead, said Joe, but I'm not dead. In Salt Lake Joe, by God, says I, am standing by my bed. They frame you on a murder charge, says Joe, but I'm not dead, says Joe, but I'm not dead. The copper bosses, they killed you, Joe. They shot you, Joe, says I. Takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe. I never died, says Joe. I never died. Him standing there as big as life and smiling with his eyes. He says what they could never kill went on to organize, went on to organize. Joe Hill ain't dead, he says to me. Joe Hill ain't never died. When working folks stand for their rights, Joe Hill is by their side. Joe Hill is by their side. From San Diego up to Maine and every minor mill, when workers strike and organize, it's there you'll find Joe Hill. It's there you'll find Joe Hill. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he. I never died, said he.
Hello everyone, my name is General Alexander Bradley. I was born in 1866 in England. My father was a coal miner. We migrated to the United States, and by the time I was 9 years old, I had the privilege of working in a coal mine picking slate called the Devil's Hole in Collinsville, Illinois area. Now what a lot of people don't know is, during this time, a child was a slave to their parent. A lot of people don't understand that until you was 18 years old, every dime you made went to your parent. So as I was picking slate, I was a child slave. That's first important for everyone to know. At 12 years old, I got to go down in the hole. And down in the Devil's Hole, it would earn that name for a reason, because it was a nasty, disgusting, dangerous mine. And whenever something happened underground, the only thing that was the most important question to come from upstairs, did any mules get killed? Not about a man, but did a mule get hurt or killed? Because that mule was more important than any man that worked underground. So you can understand why miners and immigrants come to this country might have felt less than worthy, might have had a hard time speaking up, and were so silent like that man back there. And there's a reason why that man stands back there with a shotgun. Because see, when you talked about unions back in the 1890s, after 1890 when United Mine Workers organized, that could get you killed. It sure as hell would get you beaten. And you definitely would be fired. So keep all these things in mind as we talk about the great America that we always hear so much about. Okay? In 1890, the United Mine Workers organized. It took them 3 days, people, to get a contract translated over 60 different dialects of nationalities in order for people to even know what they were voting on. If they were wanting to vote for mine safety, dare to think of an 8-hour day. And the same thing as a set pay rate for everybody. And a real ton, being a real ton. Not 2,400 or 2,800 pounds to what the mine owners decided it was, but actually 2,000 pound ton. So these conditions, to give you no idea what the people had to deal with. And you had the panic of 1893. When John was over here talking about the wages, how the wages dropped, there was 10% real unemployment in this nation for over half a decade. All right? No unemployment, folks. No safety nets whatsoever. None. So, these people, they were left to fend on their own, left to starve. And it was in that time that I met a man by the name of Jacob Coxey. Jacob Coxey had a great idea. Matter of fact, they use it nowadays. It's called creating work on government dollars, like doing roads and stuff. Okay? But Jacob Coxey, he decided we should have a petition and booths of where working folks organized, and they marched to Washington, D.C. And they wanted to let the government know we needed jobs. Well, people west of Mississippi, you know, has a long walk, so they decided they would get a train from the railroad company. No, didn't railroad company know that they loaned them that train. And those people were caught by the United States Army in Iowa, because you can count on the United States military to always keep down the working man, or any government military keep down the working man. That is a fact. Sad, but true. Those men were disembarked off that train. They were sent to walk back home, and that train was sent back. Those of us fortunate enough to walk from this area east of the Mississippi to Washington, D.C., the government knew we was coming. They waited for us. They said, if you come and you step on the grass, think about this, people, step on the grass at the nation's capital. With our history, step on the grass, you will be arrested and charged with stepping on the grass. Not only were they arrested, but they were beaten on top of it. Okay, that's the answer that they gave at the time. Because see, the working man, he was nothing but a peon is what they called us. The age of peonage. We were nothing, folks. The newspaper said the only thing we knew was a bullet or a club to resolve our labor issues. So bear that in mind when you sit there and think about this strike. And when this strike happened in 1897, I took it upon myself as a member of the local in Mount Olive, which at the time, Illinois had roughly 350 miners that were union when the strike started. The majority of them were from right here in Mount Olive, Illinois. And that gave Mount Olive a kind of an unfair advantage, and me an unfair advantage, in a way, because Mount Olive became like Grand Central for the news media at the time, the newspapers, because they would report from each state, telling what was happening in each state during this great strike. And that elevated me to a level of like I was the general leading everyone in Illinois. I organized a lot of people. They called me general around this town. It's pretty flattering, I gotta admit. You know what I mean? And I did lead men on marches. But, you know, there were a lot of men that organized. And they talk about the race issue. I'm going to point this out really clear. There's a man by the name of, they called him the Duke of Danville. You can see over in eastern Illinois, the majority of those miners over there were black. Okay? And he organized those men over there. You never hear about him. Okay? Frank Ballou, who died, Virden, buried in Taylorville. He led and organized men just like me. Barely hear anything about him. You always hear about General Bradley when it comes to this. But there were so many besides me. And the one thing it was all about, it was about a union. It took each and every person. Each one of us. Now, when we had this strike, the people in Belleville was the first one to go to let us know that they were going to agree with it. Only to back out a couple days later, and I'll be honest, that made me mad as hell that they backed out. And I gathered up miners here in Mount Olive, and we took 2 wagons loads along with about 100 men, and we marched. We marched through Warden, we marched through Staunton. Staunton, they had a little ragtag band, but you call a ragtag band, I guess. It led us in a little impromptu parade through town. And we showed up in Edwardsville, Illinois at 6 o'clock in the morning, because one thing I learned after that beating in Washington, D.C., don't let them know you're coming. Surprise. And that was my policy after that, was surprise. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, we were there in Edwardsville, Illinois, and everybody, all these miners, like, well, look at all these miners here. So they decided to take a day off and find out what was going on. Next thing you know, they were all organized with us. Then we went to Glen Carbon. That was the Madison County Coal Company owned that. Those men were paid with tokens. Now, I'll argue that when you're on strike and you're starving, it don't matter if you're paid with cash or token, you're just as broke as just starving. But they say a man's paid with a token has a lot more to go out on. I'll give them that argument. But those people even joined in with us. And people in Belleville, city officials, they found out we was heading their way. So they said, you know what, you can go ahead and come through town, we'll let you march through town, but you have to accept what our miners say, which we agreed to, and they did. And through this time, we were organized throughout Illinois, and by the time the end of the strike, before the Battle of Virden started, there were over 30,000 miners in the state of Illinois. Then after the Battle of Virden, that's when the miners really start piling in. Because what they learned there is a mine company back then, they were perfectly fine with murdering, and I will use that word, murdering people. There is no other way of candy coating it, folks. All right? And just like these men are buried over here, okay, yeah, it was Mount Olive and they were buried over here, but what the candy coating side of it, that Mr. Kaiser replied about, but the reality is those men were called murderers by people in this town. These men that were shot in the back, some of them, murderers. And they were dug up and they were put out on that street. And the United Mine Workers bought this land to bury them there. So history has made this a little civil than what it really was. Because the fact of the matter is, those men were looked down upon because they killed somebody that had a badge. It didn't matter that there was 150 of them with high-powered rifles trying to kill them. They had badges, and that somehow made them important. Y'all want to know why I'm dressed in a suit? Because people think I'm somebody with it. That's a fact. The one thing that came out of me marching with Coxey was I became known as a flamboyant dressed miner. I like that idea. Because the one thing it does, it gets these people in power to listen. Because if I looked like I did when I was underground, they wouldn't talk to me. And another thing I'm proud to hear about, they talked about how many black miners there were in United Mine Workers. United Mine Workers was one of the very first people who understood that it took everybody, that the companies were using people, their racial divides, their ethnic divides, or their language barrier, and everything else to keep everyone divided where they would not unite, to where they could keep you oppressed. That was the goal. Period. End of statement. And they still do it today. But you know one thing United Mine Workers did to get everybody convinced of that? Because believe me, it was kind of hard to sit there and say, you know, you want to work next to this guy or that guy? Okay? The one thing every miner had in common, 2 hours underground, we was all coal black. Nobody could tell who the hell we was. And that's something we all remember. No matter what race we are out in this world, we all be coal black. Because we're laborers. And there ain't but two people in this world. I'm stealing a line from a movie. There's those that work and those that don't. We're laborers. We work. They don't. That's all you need to know. Now, at this Battle of Virden, when they locked these men out, these men had no choice, folks. Imagine this. They finally got dignity. I mean, think about it. They finally recognized this, got a contract? These were the people who looked at you like you were less than a mule. And all of a sudden they're negotiating with you? Now all of a sudden you got somebody come along and say your dignity ain't nothing? There ain't no way in heck it just didn't happen. When they started locking those people out and they started building that fortress around that mine, they sent a message clear to every person, not only in the state of Illinois, but to every miner across the United States, because see, there were 4 states that now became what they call competitive coal field. Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. All 4 of those coal fields had the same thing in common. 8-hour workday, a real 2,000-pound ton, and they also had 40 cent a ton wages. That's why they called it competitive coal field. That way everybody could have a fair shake. If they had succeeded, I'm talking to the Chicago Virden Coal Company, if they had succeeded being the largest coal company in the state of Illinois, they would have broke the United Mine Workers in Illinois, which would have started a tumble in Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. That battle is what saved the United Mine Workers to go on to fight in the 1900s. That battle taught every single union in the United States member how to stand up. And if need be, sometimes you have to bleed. Sometimes you have to bleed because change ain't easy, folks. It ain't easy. And sometimes it's messy. But sometimes it has to be done. And this had to be done. And it's because of what those men did. And their wives. And their children. Because there were women and children went with them too. So you all understand, there were about 1,500 people out there in that field. Men, women, and children. And when all hell broke loose, I'm going to tell you something. I was running for my life just like the rest of them. So don't elevate me to some, because I was running scared, tired, just like the rest of them. We were outgunned, outnumbered, and they had it planned to set us up. Pure and simple. But we succeeded. Because we stood our ground. And what happened there got national attention. And the people were outraged by it. And for once in American history, the newspaper stopped talking about us being peons and somehow we might have a right to exist in these major New York newspapers and big city newspapers. The Battle of Virden, every single person in the United States ever since that happened owes the United Mine Workers a debt of gratitude for, first of all, the 8-hour workday, because that taught every other unionist country and everybody to negotiate for an 8-hour workday. And even non-union people having the 8-hour workday supposedly nowadays because of this. That's one. Safety. There has never been a union more committed to the safety of their workers than the United Mine Workers. Dignity. There has never been a union more responsible for teaching working men and women in this world. They have a right to say no. They have a right to tell my boss, kiss my ass! If that's what, so be it. Thank you, Cecil Roberts, for that speech, that mark. Because they should have that right to say, kiss my ass, folks. But back then, they didn't, obviously. Now, these men that's buried over here, they were men from Mount Olive. I led those men. And I had to deal with their death the rest of my life. I had to carry that. And in my later days, not only did I have problems with what would be COPD or black lung, whatever you want to call it, I also drank a lot. That was in medicine for a lot of people back in those days. That's how you handled things. It's a heavy responsibility leading those men. Responsibility I don't think any man's really worthy of. But I feel honored to have done it. And every one of us owes a debt of gratitude for the blood and sacrifice of every one of those men. Every single person has ever stood up and said, hell no, I'm not going to do this no more. So on this day, as we remember these martyrs, understand that these brave men here were the start of a revolution in America. Almost like a second civil war. A civil war of labor. Because that's the civil war they don't teach you about in the history books, and they don't want to teach you about the first one very much anymore. But they definitely don't want to teach you about the second one, because men united and women united and children united are far more of a threat to anybody in this country than they ever want to admit. The capitalists, we scare the capitalists to death. The corporate masters are scared to death of you people, all of us. It's time for unions and the working people to start finding some of their courage. We don't have to die for it, but we sure need to find some of their courage. I feel very humbled and honored to represent General Bradley. I myself, in personal real life, I was a union boilermaker. I was very proud of my trade and very proud of the union struggles my trade had. But I want to tell you something, we were nothing, nor any other union in the United States. I defy anybody to show any union in the United States that we owe more gratitude to than the United Mine Workers of America, who taught us everything. They taught us how to stand there. They taught us how to fight. They taught us how to resist. They taught us how to be human beings looking for dignity. And we all owe them a debt of gratitude, and I thank you all for your time listening to me.
We have at the museum, thanks to the estate of John Kaiser, some of the original telegrams sent from the Battle of Virden. And the most poignant of them all came from General Bradley. And it says, don't send men, send doctors. And I think that shows the depth of that person that Dale so beautifully portrays for us all, and we're grateful for that, for General and for Dale. So we're going to go on to take a moment to remember the Virden dead, and I want to introduce Vern Schulte. Vern is a member of the United Mine Workers of America, Local 1613, and he's on the board of the Mother Jones Museum and the Union Miners Cemetery. And Vern is going to read the names of the dead, and Mother Jones is going to ring the bell, excuse me.
Good afternoon. I'd like to take a moment of silence, please, for the passing of our miners. Thank you. I'd also like to say that I'm going to read the name of these miners that were murdered by the scabs. E.W. Smith, Joseph Gitterly, Ernest Kahnemer, Ernest F. Long, William Harmon, Frank Bilyeu, Edward Welch, Abe Burnham. May they rest in peace. Thank you, Mother.
Thank you to our minor and to Mother Jones. General Bradley and our silent minor, Damian Bernardini, who's a machinist and member of Aerospace Lodge 837, will lay a wreath on the tomb of the Virden dead.
I want to thank you for making the choice to join us to remember the atrocities your Union brothers went through. That morning when they woke up, they never knew that was going to be their last. These men buried over here, they're your older brothers. Your older brothers. They're the ones that had your back when you didn't have any idea that you were in danger. They fought your battles so you could sleep in your warm beds. These are the very brothers who sat up all night long outside to make sure those murder and thieves didn't get in. You've not seen the true horrors and evils of this world that lurk outside your door and in the world. These men over here, they're the brothers that took a bullet for each and every one of you. As the lifeblood poured out of them from their dead fingers, they passed to you. They passed to you an inheritance from your brothers, and you're guaranteed it. They guaranteed you're not going to be held in slavery to a cruel taskmaster. Your brothers left you this inheritance. The Union Brotherhood granted fair wages to you, equality and justice. It's the Union that proves these boys are your older brothers, and you are entitled to the benefits that they died for. Not everyone has an older brother that can guarantee him an 8-hour workday. It's up to you, each of you, to pass this legacy on. Guard it carefully. You're trying to be robbed of it. Don't let your children and your grandchildren suffer again the fate of your older brothers. Educate yourselves. Educate your families and your friends. Agitate when someone tries to take your union benefits. Organize those out there that don't realize the job they have has been run by a den of thieves. You're their older brothers. Take your responsibility seriously. Educate, agitate, organize. As members of the Union family, comprised of all races, colors, and creeds, you embody the ideals of this nation that have been gathered together here from the ends of the earth. Stay true to the oath you've taken to uphold our Union family. These boys' blood paid the ultimate sacrifice. Have courage! Have courage, men and women. Have courage. Pick up the fallen standard that they dropped and press on into battle for fair wages, equality, and justice. Continue to pray for the dead, but fight like hell for the living.
Mother and our silent miner will lay a wreath at the tomb. Mother Jones into our sentinel miner. In just a moment, Wildflower is going to play Have You Been to Jail for Justice? And then after that song, as you will see on the program, we have a group of regional labor leaders who are terribly important to what's going on to laboring people today, right now, in the communities around us, who are going to speak. And each of them will introduce themselves. But first, have you been to jail for justice?
Was it Caesar Chavez, or maybe it was Dorothy Day? Some say Dr. King or Gandhi set them on their way. No matter who your mentors are, it's pretty plain to see that if you've been to jail for justice, you're in good company. Yeah. Have you been to jail for justice? I want to shake your hand. 'Cause sitting in and lying down are ways to take a stand. Have you sung a song for freedom or marched that picket line? Have you been to jail for justice? Then you're a friend of mine.
You law-abiding citizens, come listen to this song. Laws are made by people, and people can be wrong. Once unions were against the law, but slavery was fine. Women were denied the vote, and children worked the mine. The more you study history, the less you can deny it. A rotten law stays on the books till folks with guts defy it.
Have you been to jail for justice? Then you're a friend of mine. Sitting in and lying down are ways to take a stand. Have you sung a song for freedom or marched that picket line? Have you been to jail for justice? Then you're a friend of mine. Well, the law's supposed to serve us, and so are the police. But when the system fails, it's up for us to speak our piece. It takes eternal vigilance for justice to prevail. So get courage from your convictions. Let them haul you off to jail. Have you been to jail for justice? Have one to shake your hand. Just sitting in and lying down are ways to make a stand. Have you sung a song for freedom or marched that picket line? Have you been to jail justice? Will you go to jail for justice? Have you been to jail for justice? Then you're a friend of mine.
And who shares the monument with Mother Jones?
First of all, I wanted to thank Joanne for inviting me to this special commemoration for Miners Day. Even though some of us are from different unions, we're all together as a family. My name is Julie Latempt Brazier, and I'm the president of Local 2887 out of Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. We're a clerical support. I'm also on the board of directors for Council 31 for the state of Illinois. How did we get here, and why does it matter? Why teach the history of labor to those that follow us? It's important that the generations to come understand why and study those contributions of the generations of union activists that have made it their way here from 1898 to the present. Our predecessors successfully fought for changes that benefited all Americans, not just union members. We are building upon the example that others have set forth. Mother Jones, Eugene Debs, Martin Luther King, Samuel Gompers, Lucy Parsons, and the list goes on and on. Today's union veterans take pride in what we have all accomplished together. These men that all came before us, we can take pride in their accomplishments. These workers here today, along with Mother Jones, pushed for better working conditions and fair wages. A writer, Elliot Gorn, said it best about Mother Jones. She told the miners if they were afraid to fight or unable, then she would continue alone. Wherever she went, the flame of protest had leaped up into the hearts of men. Her story was a veritable odyssey of revolt. She provided dramatic speeches and street theater everywhere she went. If you are lucky, you have a Mother Jones amongst you somewhere. Ask Me Local 2887 is currently negotiating with the university for a new and fair contract. Today, we are on day 465. We are strong. We are united, and we are standing up. It's not a short road, nor a simple one. There are as many turns and twists as one might think. We are building on the platform left to us by others. The platform of unity, the platform of solidarity, the platform of leadership. We are the people we've been waiting for. Thank you.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. My name is Joshua Arnold. I'm a member of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. I am a district delegate. I am the B Lodge educator. I am a member of the St. Louis Labor Council representing B Lodge. I am elected shop steward. And I am the recording secretary for the District Political Action Committee. So I got a lot of hats. I timed this at home. It took me 4 minutes and 10 seconds to get through. So I should be within time. I have been asked to comment on what this history means to us in the 21st century. It would seem that not a lot has changed between 1898 and 2023. Our nation is still gripped in struggle between robber barons and workers. The names have changed, but the struggle largely has not. Eugene Debs, Smedley Butler, Mary Harris, Dr. Martin Luther King, the socialists of America's past struggled to better our material conditions today. The sacrifices of workers and men and women in our labor movement means food on our table, an 8-hour day, safety on the job, and a weekend, to name a few. However, Far more importantly, this history reminds us that without struggle, there is no progress. The words of Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg ring truer today. For what was the Civil War about, if not a capitalist right to own their workers? 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it cannot forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from those honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. Brothers and sisters, it is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us. Brothers and sisters, it is rather for us to bring forth a new birth of freedom. That is what this history means. We are the Union, and the Union is us. In solidarity, I thank you all.
General, Mother. Hello, my name is Shannon Duffy. I'm the business representative with the United Media Guild. We used to be called the St. Louis Newspaper Guild once upon a time, but we've expanded. We're regional. We have journalists in St. Louis and the Peoria Journal-Star, Pekin Daily Times, Rockford Register-Star, Springfield Journal-Register. We have a lot of journalists in the Midwest, and as you know, newspapers is a declining industry. But we've been organizing like crazy for the past 10 years or so, and I'm always struck at coming across workers who know about Mother Jones. And by the way, I think I saw Bob Kelly. Bob, are you here? There he is. Retired Post-Dispatch writer. You here for the Labor Tribune? There you go, brother. So, I'm trying to think now. In 2017, the state of Missouri, the very, very red state of Missouri, supermajority in the House of Representatives and in the state Senate, and Republican governor, the very red state of Missouri passed right to work. Sorry, now you can see me better. And our governor at the time was just so delighted by this that he signed the bill, I think 4 different times. He had signing ceremonies around different parts of the state where he could make a big production out of signing right to work legislation and, you know, getting local business, I guess, to love him all the more. But there's a clause in the Missouri state constitution called the citizen's veto that says after something is passed and signed into law, if within so many days, if you can garner so many signatures in so many different congressional districts, it can be held in abeyance and put on the ballot for the entire state to decide it. So immediately Labor went into hyperdrive along with all kinds of citizen coalition, faith labor groups. We spread out far and wide, and we got, what was it called? Proposition A. Vote no on Proposition A. That was right to work. I believe I was in Farmington, Missouri, which is a pretty rural town, and I was talking to this woman, young woman, about the upcoming vote, and she was not for supporting unions. She had a bad job, didn't make much money. She didn't see why unions, which make more than everyone else, should get some kind of special protection, right? And I was trying to get to know her a little bit so I could, agitate her. And she said, well, look, if you think I'm some kind of Mother Jones, you can forget it. And I said, oh, you know who Mother Jones is, do you? And she says, well, yeah. I said, well, what do you know about her? So she starts telling me about this woman who she knew quite a bit, actually. This woman who, had just been dealt a terrible hand, kept getting knocked down, but kept getting up, right? But again, she thought unions were just not, anything she needed to be supporting. So agitation, she said, I'm not, you can't, what did she say? She was a labor agitator. Well, when people use that term, they tend to use it wrong. You all are unionists. You get it. It's not, you don't agitate people. You don't try to piss them off or get them angry. An agitator in a washing machine goes up and down, knocks the dirt off the clothes, right? And when you're agitating someone, you're trying to knock the dirt off their thinking. You're trying to get sexism knocked out of their head and racism and age, all the isms, right? You're trying to knock them out. You're trying to get them to see clearly what is in their best interest. So I'm talking to her and she's telling me how rotten it is, and it turns out she's a single mom. She's got 2 kids. So I ask her, about that. And she's telling me she has no health insurance, none. Neither do her children. So I said, well, you should, obviously you're for Medicaid expansion, right? Well, yeah, obviously I'm for Medicaid expansion, but they're never going to expand Medicaid in the state of Missouri. I said, well, you know how unions are kind of the vanguard of social change, or the tip of the spear, right? Well, yeah, I know unions, march for things that sometimes. I said, well, let me ask you this. Do you think you have a better chance of getting Medicaid expanded in this state with a weak labor movement or with a strong labor movement? And that's when the light bulb went on. And you could see her eyes kind of, and she actually went out and worked with it to defeat Prop A, right to work. And in 2018, it went down in glorious defeat in the state of Missouri. By 67% of the electorate voted no. There's 114 counties in the state of Missouri. 99 of them voted greater than 2-1 against right to work, including the county of the idiot state rep from southeast Missouri who introduced the bill in the first place. So, God bless Mother Jones, right? But this woman knew about her. Another person that told me about Mother Jones not too long ago, do you remember when they organized Amazon warehouse up in New York? So a friend of mine, his name is Nick James. He grew up right up 55 where Highway 48 is. If you go down there, it's, I believe his hometown is Stonington, right? Isn't that right there on 48? Nick was a union organizer. He lives in South City, South St. Louis. And he was having a party, and some of these people from the Amazon Workers Union were coming by, and he said, why don't you come by? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. I don't know if you ever read the book or saw the movie. Jessica Bruder wrote the book. What's it called? Nomadland. I think it won the Academy Award about 2 or 3 years ago. Anyway, it's about all these older people who, after the 2008 financial meltdown, became homeless. They lost their 401ks, they lost their homes, and they started living in their vans and living in their cars. And it was really, it's a powerful book. But when I read it, I could not believe how evil and manipulative Amazon is. All these people, they work for them in various places, and they exploit the hell out of these. So when I heard that people that had organized at Amazon, I thought, I got to meet them. And I believe her name was Justine. She was a very young, very radical young organizer from New York. And so she was on fire to talk about Mother Jones. She could not believe that, right here at exit 44, Mount Olive, Illinois. And while she was in town, I believe she came up here. I believe they all did. This is truly hallowed ground, and I want to thank you so much for letting me be here today. But anyway, I asked Justine, I said, so when did you know? When did, what kind of tipped the scale? Because a lot of places have been failing trying to organize Amazon. And you know what she said? She said, well, at one point when they started coming, before going in to our meetings, I knew we were gonna, it was possibly the tipping point. I said, well, she said, but what did that? The reason they came in was we found out, this just blew my mind, we found out that like 20-something% of the workers there are homeless. And I'm like, wait, what? New York City, I know the cost of living's high, but full-time employment, and they're homeless, and they were feeding them. They fed them every day, and these people appreciated the hell out of that because they didn't have much money, and they would come and they would sit, and the Amazon Workers Union, AWU, would speak to them, give them literature. It was a safe space. It's mind-blowing that Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the United States, one of the richest people in the world, talk about your oligarchs, is paying people such pittances that they can't even get a goddamn place to live. So anyway, she was just on fire, this Justine. The other thing is the Fight for 15.
Fight for 20.
Thank you. The Fight for 15 started 10 years ago in 2013. I was in my doctor's office watching it on TV and in the waiting room, and people were talking, I can't believe that burger flippers want to make 15, and everybody thought it was just a terrible idea, but 10 years later, state after state, city after city, people are talking about what is a livable wage, right? And you're right, 20. But the Fight for 15, and people are talking about the voiceless, right? I mean, you talk about, fast food workers, oh my God. But they just finished, they signed it into law, Gavin Newsom, the 28th of September. Everyone in the state of California is going to get a wage increase if you're a fast food worker to $20 an hour. Okay, 557,000 fast food workers in the state of California. And the freaking subsequent raises afterwards are tied into the consumer price index. And there's a council of unions that will sit and actually bargain. Stuff that the National Labor Relations Act says you can't do is getting done. Different strategies. I mean, the labor movement is varied right now. We've got and the Fight for 15 did some great things with one-day strikes and walking people back and getting faith leaders to come with them. It's an exciting time right now, and it's like a big quilt, a patchwork. But the common thread through all of it is the work that Mother Jones did, right? Holistically, it wasn't just workers, it was their families, it was their community. Her spirit lives on. It lives on in the fight against right to work. It lives on in Michigan, where they just reversed it. It lives on at the UAW and their strike right now. Her spirit lives on in Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where they've been striking for just over a year now. So anyway, I just want to say, God bless you all. God bless Mother Jones. And as far as the voiceless and all of that, one of my favorite verses is of Solidarity Forever. It's one of the newer verses. It says, they say our time is over. They say our day is through. And that you don't need a union if your collar isn't blue. Yeah, well, that is just another lie. The boss is telling you, 'cause the union makes us strong. Sing with me. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. Up the union. Long live Mother Jones. I'm impressed, Shannon. I'm not going to hurt you people with my singing voice. I'm sorry. But excellent job. Thank you, brother. Thank you to everyone here for joining us in celebration of Miners Day and this year of remembrance of the 125-year anniversary of the Battle of Vernon. The reason this cemetery on this land and this sacred ground of labor exists. Thank you to those who lost their lives on that tragic day in Virden. Thank you to the United Mine Workers who established this cemetery. We honor and give thanks to Mother Jones for choosing to be laid to rest here under the clay with her boys from that battle. Thank you to the progressive mine workers who assumed ownership of the cemetery, raised the funds for, and created this great monument. Thank you to the Union Miners Cemetery Board who continue to maintain this grand and sacred site. Thank you to the Friends of the Mother Jones Museum Board, on which I am proud to serve, for keeping the memory and spirit of Mother Jones alive in all of us. I'm proud and honored to be a small part of this celebration and to share my thoughts. May Day, Labor Day, Miners Day, they're all an opportunity to remember the struggle and to advance the rights of workers nationwide. Let's remember that it all came about due to the hard work of those who fought for labor rights long before any of us were born. Let's remember those struggles occurred in a time that advancing workers' rights often led to bloodshed on both sides. The late 1800s and early 1900s were a time of great labor strife and hard-fought battles that are etched into the history of both labor and even more so in Illinois in particular. It was a time of the Haymarket Riot. It was the time of the Pullman sleeper car strike and the Battle of Virden. It was a time when the railroads, coal, and steel owners were run by robber barons who acted like monarchs. It was a time that workers by the thousands rose up to strike against the low wages, long hours, and dangerous work conditions forced upon them. It was a time that the Pinkerton, Thiel, Burns, and numerous other detective agencies created small private armies of armed guards for hire to fight for the company against striking workers. It was a time when the company owners followed the concept espoused by railroad owner Jay Gould, who stated that he could easily hire half of the country to kill the other half. Those are the people we fight. It was a time when coal miners working in the Virden, Illinois mine were on strike, and the owners recruited a trainload of African-American miners from Alabama to replace the striking miners and put armed deputies or armed detectives and security guards on that train. Those Alabama miners had been offered jobs in the North, but they were not told they were coming to break a strike. When the train arrived in Virden, the strikers attempted to surround the train, and shooting erupted from all sides. 8 striking miners were killed, 30 were wounded. 4 guards were killed, and 5 were wounded. 4 of the miners killed were buried in the Mount Olive Cemetery. Miners and their families would come to the grave sites to demonstrate in honor of the men and the Union. Some ministers and merchants of Mount Olive objected to those demonstrations, and siding with the railroad and the mining companies, demanded the bodies be moved. In September of 1899, the United Mine Workers of America purchased a 1-acre site next to the cemetery, and the bodies of the Virden miners were moved to the only Union-owned cemetery in the country. This cemetery and the additional land later added to it was chosen by Mother Jones to be your final resting place. The Progressive Mine Workers of America raised the funds and raised the Mother Jones monument that we stand before. Thank you for that, my brothers and sisters. I represent motion picture and commercial production workers in the state of Missouri. Our jobs are often of short duration, which adds to the difficulty of organizing. Our workers recently shot a car shield commercial at the Centene Ice Center in Maryland Heights. You all have probably seen them. You've got Ryan O'Reilly, who no longer plays for the Blues. You've got Pat Maroon, who no longer plays for the Blues, as being the popular people that sell car shield protection on the airwaves. Well, the previous year we had a similar shoot for the same company. Ryan was still playing for us then. And with nearly 80% of the crew requesting representation, we held a job action. While we were not able to secure a contract, again, very short-term jobs, we were able to get the company to agree to run their payroll through a local signatory company and get benefits for the crew in place. This year,
same Car Shield production team did their best to avoid hiring any of our members as they tried to avoid our organizing efforts. It was day 2 of a 3-day shoot, and the crew was at lunch when we reached the over 50% level of crew requesting representation. I advised the workers that there was going to be an extended lunch break. I advised the crew that resulted in a loud and heated speech by the producer, making sure the crew heard that I was the reason we aren't getting work in our market. I was driving work away from St. Louis, and that they would never be back. Only time will tell how that will finally play out. I mean, they had Pat, they had Ryan. They aren't coming back to St. Louis except with other teams. But, you know, many things are said in the heat of the moment during a job action that later proved to not be true, or do not prove to be true. We were once again able to get benefits for the crew, and they returned to work. Looking back at labor history into those 2 job actions, I have little doubt of what the outcome with that very angry producer would have been 125 years ago. I'm thankful that our members have entrusted me with the position of leading our local during the modern era of unionism. I'm not sure that I would have survived in the climate that existed in the days of Mother Jones, the Virden Massacre, and the many other violent and deadly labor conflicts of that time. There's a very good reason that in the modern age of labor, we sit across the table from each other and we negotiate through collective bargaining. It comes from a long history of disputes being settled or not in a very different way. It comes from the blood of those before us. This year, my wife lost a very dear friend, and I was a bit surprised that he had been a regular visitor, and friends and family had chosen to have a celebration of life gathering at this monument. My wife was a bit surprised that I wanted to attend, as he was much closer to her than to me. While there, the leader of our group asked Mike Ketchmer, who was here with the cemetery board, if it would be okay to spread some of his ashes around. Mike, of course, said yes, and I noted that it wasn't a matter of permission, that it would be honored to have another lover of Mother Jones join her. And we have no way of knowing how often this happens, either with or without one of our groups being here to see it. Now, I can virtually guarantee that if Mike would have taken a different attitude, one of the folks would have distracted him while the others walked around the monument spreading ashes. You know, there's no doubt in my mind there, but that's not how we treat this sacred ground. I'm confident that there are many people from across the country who have honored this site with the ashes of their loved ones as they gave their respect to lost family and friends and their respect for the memory of Mother Jones. With each, it adds to the memory of Mother Jones and the sacred nature of this site. Brothers and sisters, in the spirit of Mother Jones, solidarity forever. Our unions, yes, our unions, our members, because our members are our unions, make us strong. In the spirit of Mother Jones, solidarity forever.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Ecker. I'm a lifelong resident of Mount Olive and a proud grandson of a coal miner that died on the job. As a member of the United Steelworkers, Local 1899 in Granite City, I retired after 30 years at U.S. Steel Granite City Works, where I was an industrial electrician. I am honored to stand on this sacred ground to honor the memory of the miners who paid the ultimate price at the Virden some 125 years ago. Because of their brave sacrifice, they paved the way for all workers to organize and have protection against a tyrant company. Today we are watching the benefits of yesteryear's battles. Multiple unions are on strike, seeking fair and equal pay and benefits. In some cases, the unions are asking for what was given up in the past contracts to keep the company in business. Remember, the union is only as strong as the weakest member, and we must all do what we can to further strengthen the union. We can never forget what has been done for us and we will never give up the fight. In solidarity.
So I am going to introduce to you one of my all-time favorite human beings, James Golds. Jim was working on the issues that we've talked about all day and bringing the story of Mother Jones to a wider audience long before I got involved. He's been one of the people most responsible for our organizations here, making relationships with the Spirit of Mother Jones Festival in Cork, the Mining Museum, the people in Ludlow, and for all of us to find that we do indeed have that common ground. He also produces some great videos. Please look at his JASE, J-A-S-E channel on YouTube, and you will see some wonderful, wonderful videos. So here's James.
Thank you for that flattering introduction, Joanne. I don't know, I'm just a grassroots guy, just like the guys and gals here. We all put our pants on one leg at a time if we're wearing pants. But I want to get more serious. This is getting a kind of a long program. Thank you, Mother Jones, for bringing that great Irish fighting spirit to America from the rebel city, Cork, Ireland. Thank you for being the heartbeat of the American labor movement. And in honor of that, I'm going to put these on her grave. I have a resolution here from our county board, Macoupin County. It says, recognizing the October 12, 1898 gun battle in Virden, Illinois. Whereas the members of the Macoupin County, Illinois board recognize October 12th marks the 125th anniversary of a gun battle between Union mine workers and guards representing the Chicago Virden Mine Company in 1898. Whereas that conflict sparked the effort for workers to obtain the 8-hour workday and contributes to this county's rich history. Whereas Mount Olive-based, self-appointed United Mine Worker organizer General Alexander Bradley, who was present during the battle, became the most successful United Mine Worker of America organizer in history. Whereas the legendary Irish firebrand, Mother Jones, is an international figure whom this board recognizes as an important figure to many around the world. Whereas this battle resulted in Mother Jones requesting that her remains be brought to Mount Olive and interred in Union Miners Cemetery with 3 of the 8 miners who died in that battle. She declared she wished to sleep beneath the clay with those brave boys. Therefore, be it resolved, this board thanks longtime Virden resident, bookstore owner, and historian John Alexander for his diligent research about the gun battle and for making it known to the wider public. Further, this body supports and appreciates the efforts of Union Miners Cemetery and the Mount Olive Friends of Mother Jones Museum, who will recognize the importance of these events with a program that will be held in Union Miners Cemetery on October 8th, 2023 at noon, which will feature John Alexander, AFL-CIO President Tim Dray, General Alexander Bradley, Mother Jones, and other labor leaders. Labor music will be part of the program, and it is a family-friendly event. Thank you, Macoupin County Board. Mother Jones is the only labor figure of note that has a festival in her name at the country of her birth, the place of her birth, and at her final resting place. I have a letter from the spirit of Mother Jones Festival based in Cork, City Cork, the Republic of Ireland. Salutation to the 2023 Union Miners' Day celebration at Mount Olive, Illinois, from Cork and the Republic of Ireland. On the occasion of the 2023 Union Miners' Day celebration, the Cork Mother Jones Committee, which arranges the annual Spirit of Mother Jones Festival in the city of Cork each year, wishes to send fraternal and friendly greetings as well as solidarity to the Mount Olive Festival Organizing Committee. The Union Miner Cemetery at Mount Olive is indeed a fitting location for the celebration of Miners' Day, as it is the only Union-operated cemetery in the USA. It contains the remains of many of those Union miners who stood by the principles of the trade union movement in the early days of organized labor in Illinois. It cost the lives of many men, women, and children in strikes by unionized workers held to seek better conditions and wages for working people throughout the USA. Those are some of the men who lost their lives at Virden. One memorial marks the grave of the remarkable General Alexander Bradley, who led the United Mine Workers of America in Illinois in the 1890s and made Illinois a Union stronghold. He was present at the Virden Battle, in which 7 miners were killed in a battle to protect the rights of workers to strike. The youngest miner who died was Edward Long, just 19 years old. The impressive and striking memorial to labor leader Mary Harris, Mother Jones, was unveiled on Miners' Day, October 12, 1936, by the Progressive Mine Workers of America after she had early asked in 1923, quote, "When the last call comes for me to take my final rest, will the miners see that I get a resting place in the same clay that shelters the miners who gave up their lives on the hills of Virden, Illinois? I hope it will be my final consolation when I pass away to feel I sleep beneath the clay with those brave boys." From Cork, we feel a special affinity with the safekeepers of Union Miners Cemetery at Mount Olive, which contains the remains of Mary Harris. It is where she wanted to lie for eternity, and we hope those links between the birthplace of Mary Harris and the final resting place of Mother Jones will be strengthened the years to come as we continue to honor Mother Jones here in her native city. In Cork, we hold some soil from her grave near the monument, and we are pleased to see the national flag of Ireland fly over her grave earlier this year. We recognize and respect the huge work being carried out by the Mount Olive Committee. We are pleased to acknowledge the forthcoming series of events at the Mount Olive Cemetery on the 8th of October 2023, and we wish every success to all involved. Solidarity always, Jared O'Mahony, on behalf of the Cork Mother Jones Committee 2023. And lastly, I want to ask you for a favor from all Friends of Mother Jones. There's the Friends of Mother Jones that started a project to get the greatest labor leader in our country, Cecil Roberts, who has a history with the West Virginia mine workers because his great-grandmother was a good friend of Mother Jones. They called her the Mother Jones of West Virginia. Some say she was just as fierce as Mother Jones. His great-grandfather, Bill Blizzard, was a great leader of the United Mine Workers. Cecil Roberts in his speeches frequently brings up the name of Mother Jones. He invokes her name. We heard the song, Going to Jail for Justice. Cecil's done that many, many times. To keep this short, we started a petition drive that we're going to present to the Spirit of Mother Jones Festival in Cork, Ireland, to get Cecil Roberts recognized with an award from them to an American labor leader, our greatest labor leader of our time. And it's over there by that building. Scott Thomas is back there waving his hand. We'd sure appreciate it if before you leave, you sign on to that petition. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Here's Dave Tucker, the moving force behind the wonderful Coal Museum in Gillespie, our great collaborator and an all-time just agitator for good stuff, and he's very good at it. So here he is to tell you a few good things.
Hello, I have no idea why I'm up here. For 60 years I've been in the private sector, recently on a city council on the wrong side of a negotiation table, but now, after 6 weeks, I'm a proud union member. Do not throw stuff, I'm a union member now. So in that short time, joining a union, I've squelched a ridiculous disciplinary hearing. I've been elected a union steward, and I will sit across the table from that Macoupin County board. I hope Jim softened them up a little bit, but I'll be taking the union fight to them. So, but little updates on some of the things. The glorious history here has been covered well, but I'd like to mention a few things going on in the future. Devin Hunter, Helene Silverman from the U of I's Mythic Mississippi program, and we've been involved, and a couple of neat things have happened because of that corroboration. We started a coal heritage labor triangle from Virden to Mount Olive to Gillespie. That's a path. That's the premise of their whole project, is to make history, cultural anthropology, and tourism combination. And in the audience out here now, I noticed people I gave a little talk to on Friday that came down to take part in that Labor Heritage Triangle, an Airstream group that were great visitors to the museum, and thanks for sticking around for the weekend. The project works. Another spin-off of that project, the Coalfield I-55 rest area is going to be reworked. The architects on that project found us. We've given them a good primer of several hour course on coal mining. They brought in the architects that are helping them from Springfield and St. Louis, and a couple spots from outside of that area, out from California. We've also been in contact with the director of the information that's going to be distributed at that site. It's going to be a coalfield rest area. There's a nice plaque there now that some of you have been involved with. That's going to stay there. The footprint of the building itself is going to be 4 to 5 times bigger. And what we're going to make sure they focus on is passing on the knowledge to 10,000 people a day about our area and the coal history. Another recent, just this last week, I was contacted by an author in Alabama wanting some photos of historic mining type things. And, well, quick email, sent some back. We found out we had better photos than the National Archives, and he'll be using those in an article similar to our Illinois State Historical Society paper that he's writing. But a phone call with that one, he found out about our Alabama miners. We're going to co-opt him to talk about the miners that were mentioned today, coming from Alabama, and what happened after his Alabama people came up here. So what we're going to try to do is keep the future, pass on all this information to the future generations. You guys have all done well keeping track of the past, and we're going to make sure it goes on in the future. Thank you.
We're just a few minutes away from some good music, and there's still cookies to eat, so don't forget that. So Anna and I are here, along with Mother, to hand out the first of our Mother Jones Solidarity Awards. And we have 4 of them going to people who have really helped make it possible for all of us to be here, and who have kept the story going, who've held the flame of Mother Jones unionism, labor struggles on every front imaginable, collaboration with unions, political pressures, just their good minds and good hearts bringing us together. So we have four awards today, and 3 of those people are with us. Mother will actually hand out the awards. The first one goes to Jim Alderson. Come up here. I met Jim 8.5 years ago, and he said, you know, you should come and join us here in Mount Olive. And so we've been at it all this time. But he introduced me to all of these marvelous people. Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Big surprise.
Yes, we love surprises.
Thank you.
And the second goes to the historian who has kept the story going in detail, in magnificent, the magnificent monument that sits on the Virden Square wouldn't be there without John Alexander. John Alexander, one of the best friends that labor could ever have in Illinois or anywhere. And the third one goes to another of our steady hands who works so hard to show us all what we have in common and to focus on what we have in common, James Golds.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting this.
You weren't supposed to. It's supposed to be a surprise.
Well-deserved honor, sir.
Yes.
For all of you.
The last one goes to our good friend and a man who's been a mentor to many of us, whose health prevented him from being here today, and that's Nelson Gurman. Nelson has kept so much of the story. Oh my gosh, those archives, those stories, those photographs, those connections. Nelson brought me to meet with Tim and Amy and along with Jim, and really has always worked to keep us together. The Mother Jones Bench, the wonderful program we did last year. We have so much to thank Nelson for. I went by his house in Staunton. I told him this was going to happen so that he would hear it from us and not from somebody else. And Mother and I will find a time to deliver his certificate to him. So we're now down to the last of our good things, and our thank yous, and a reminder there are still cookies there. I guess we drank the kazoo coffee and we sold the rest of it. We have so many people to thank. Mythic Mississippi Project, City of Mount Olive. We wouldn't have a museum without them. Without the city clerk and the city bookkeeper, we would have no one to mind the museum. I think one of the things you need to know about our organizations that we're all volunteers. We have no paid staff at all. But we have lots of good friends who help us and lots of people who work very hard to keep the story alive. And this is just the beginning of this year, Virden to Mount Olive, because next year on this spot it will be 125 years that this place was commemorated, which I mean was formed, and here we are 124 years later. Next year we're going to have another big party. Maybe we won't talk quite as long, but we will have another big party. And we want you all to come back for that and to look for the press, because there's going to be a concert, there are going to be webinars, a lot of information on spreading the story about what happened in Virden and how it continues to affect us and how it got this place formed. So we're going to end this day with this piece of the day. Excuse me, this day is not over. And Wildflower is going to play Solidarity Forever, and then we're immediately going to go on to Casting Ruins, and they're going to play you some hell-raising labor songs of all kinds. But first, Solidarity Forever.
At this time, I'd ask you to all stand and circle the monument and join hands. This is a tradition. It may not be always on your program, but it's a sign of solidarity that we've been doing every time you see Olin Clayton here.
Yeah.
Help us out.
Stretch
Everybody
it
make a
out,
big circle.
stretch it out.
Make Mother proud.
Circle all the way around if it's too long for us.
I got somebody now.
My daughter's gonna
Everybody
sing
stretch
along.
out.
Whatever
We
you gotta
can
do,
make this.
make
We
a
can do
circle.
this.
Oh, sing what you can.
Everybody keep going that way. Stretch, stretch,
To
stretch.
the workers but you run, there can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble power of one? For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us
So join the union while you may. Don't wait till your dying day. That might not be far away, you dirty black-leg miner. He grabs his studs and down he goes to you, that coal that lies below. There's not a woman in this town road. Look at the black-leg miner. Delaware is a terrible place. They rub wet clay in the black-leg's face. Round the heaps they run a foot race, catch the black-leg miner. So join the union while you may. Don't wait till your dying day. That might not be.
Mother Jones is not forgotten by the miners of this field. She's gone to rest above, God bless her soul. Tried to lead the boys to victory, but was punished here in jail for the price of just a little lump of coal. When a miner in the morning gets his car up to the face, he'll set some timbers, then he'll bore himself a hole. He'll get a shot of powder, get his battery and his line. He's shooting down that little lump of coal. When a man has toiled and labored till his life it's almost gone, then the operator thinks he's just a fool. They sneak around and fire him just because he's growing old, and swear they caught him breaking company rules. Don't forget me, little darling, when they lay me down to rest. Tell my brothers all the loving words I say. Let the flowers be forgotten, sprinkle coal dust on my grave in remembrance of the UMWA.